Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Are you ready for the word?
Yes, sir.
Let's go back to Joshua 1 and Genesis 1. Joshua 1 and Genesis 1. Good to see all of you this morning. Glad you're here. You there?
Yes, sir.
Joshua 1 verse 8. This book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth, but you shall meditate therein day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then you shall make your way prosperous, and then you shall have good success. The phrase good success means then you shall think intelligently or do intelligently. Well, this is the verse that I want us to use, at least for a while, as we set the direction for the study that we've embarked upon. We set out to study the 613 laws because someone somewhere said there were 613 laws. And because somebody somewhere said there were 613 laws, somebody else said it, and then somebody else said it, and then somebody else said it, and pretty soon it just became common knowledge and accepted knowledge. Well, there are 613 laws. And that's what I'd heard, and so that's what I had accepted. But once I began to look at it, I quickly saw that arriving at that number is a very arbitrary thing. It's according to who's looking and how they're numbering it as to whether there's really 613 or not. And so when we started, I said to you that we were going to study the laws of Torah, and that there might be 613, there might be more, there might be less. And then last week, as I was preparing for our third session, or week before last, as I was preparing for our third session in this study, this phrase in Joshua 1:8 just continued to rise up in my spirit. Day after day, this phrase just kept coming back to me. The phrase, this book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth. Or literally, this book of Torah. Literally, it says, this book of instruction shall not depart out of your mouth. That is a perfect translation of that verse. This book of instruction shall not depart out of your mouth. You shall meditate in it. In what? The book of instruction. You'll meditate in it day and night. Then when I had thought on that passage and meditated on that verse, I heard this in my spirit. The stories are instruction too.
Yes, sir.
The instruction is in a book, and the stories in the book are just as much of as instruction as the laws and the commandments are. And that's when it became apparent to me that if we go into Torah just looking for a list of things that we're supposed to do and looking for a list of things that we're not supposed to do, then we're going to miss a lot of stuff that we need.
Right. Yes, sir.
The same Elohim who wants us to know the instructions found on the tablets of stone also wants us to know the instruction found in the stories of Genesis.
Right.
The Torah is a book of instruction. It's not just a book that has some instruction in it. It is a book of instruction. We can look in it and find laws, whether there's 613 or not, I don't know. But we can look in it and find the laws. But it is an entire whole book. All of it is supposed to be instruction for us. What parts are not to depart out of our mouth? All of it. What parts are we supposed to meditate in day and night?
All of it.
All of it. Not just 613 laws.
Right.
So to just search out 613 laws would be a mistake.
Right.
This book of the law should be in our mouth. Now here's what that means. The seventh day is holy. It's set apart. It's consecrated. Men say all days are alike. We can worship any day, but that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says that the seventh day is holy. It's set apart. And it says that we should have holy convocations on that day. That should be in our mouth.
Right.
The name of our Creator is Yahweh. His name should not be treated as nothingness. It should not be taken in vain. His name should be known, exalted, and manifested, and declared, and called upon. That should be in our mouth. Right. There is no place in true worship of Yahweh for graven images. No places in the worship of Yahweh for likenesses to be made. None. The feasts are not Jewish. They are Yahweh's feast. They are His appointed times. They are shadows of things to come. These kind of things need to be in our mouth. We need to be always ready to give an answer. When we're talking to people, we should be meditating on these things day and night. And when we're talking to them, they should be on our mouth. Those are the kind of things that we should be talking about and we should be saying. But so should this be in our mouth. In the beginning, Yahweh created the heavens and the earth.
Yes, sir.
He created it in 6 days. He's mighty and supreme. There's none like Him. He was before all things. Those kind of things need to be in our mouth just as much as the other things do. Those are the kind of things we need to talk about just as much as the other things. Those are the kind of things we ought to meditate on day and night, and not just a law that tells us what we should and shouldn't be doing. Information is given to us all through Torah, and that information is instruction for us. If we know and meditate on all the book of instruction, then the promise is, and it's an amazing promise. The promise is, when you start looking at it, meditating on it, talking about it, you start thinking intelligently.
Right.
So we're going to use Joshua 1:8 as a focal point for now to provide us that kind of direction. Now here's what I mean. We will use it as a focal point so that we don't forget what we're doing. We're not just studying Genesis, and we're not just going to study Exodus, or we're not just going to study Leviticus. We're going to devote ourselves to doing what Yahweh told us to do. He said, "This book of instruction shall not depart out of your mouth. You shall meditate therein day and night." That means we have a book of instruction that that it is meant for us to become extremely familiar with.
Right. Amen.
Last week we looked into Genesis 1, which began the story of creation. We made it through the 4th day of creation. Allow me to reflect back on that for just a moment. You can turn to Genesis 1 if you like. Again, it's a book of instruction. So what instruction were we given in Genesis 1? In Genesis 1, the instruction we're given is that in the beginning, the first thing that we are to know, the first thing that we have to know is that everything that is because Yahweh created it.
Right. Amen.
If anything is, it is because He created it.
Yes, sir.
Because first, Yahweh created the heavens and the earth. Now, to know something like that and to be able to say something like that makes you intelligent.
Right. Right.
You listen to the theories that men have conjured up, and their theories are wrapped up in a whole lot of unprovable and delusional, vain imaginations. They think that everything that is came from an explosion. They say there was nothing, absolutely nothing, and then that nothing blew up. Now that makes no sense. That is a vain imagination. And then they said when this nothing blew up, over millions and millions of years, life began to evolve out of it. Everything that we now see evolved from that nothing that blew up. Well, that's unintelligent.
Right.
But yet people that believe that are given PhDs and looked upon by the world as being the smart ones. Those that believe in creation are looked upon as being the not so smart ones. Right? We should not, and here's the point, we should not shrink in shame or embarrassment. The one who created it all gave us His first-hand account of how it all took place.
That's right. Right.
Right? He was there.
Right.
He should know.
Right.
And He said that He created the heavens and the earth. Now, all of these other folks that are theorizing about how it came about, they weren't there and they don't know anybody that was there.
Right.
So how would they know? That's the reason they have theories.
Right.
Yahweh didn't say to Moses, well, here's what I think happened.
No.
Yahweh explained to him step by step how he did what he did.
Yes, sir.
He said it was empty. He said it was useless when he first got started.
Yeah.
His spirit moved over it, then he began to speak things into existence. He said, light be, and light became. Now get this confidence down on the inside of you. We have to get this confidence down on the inside of us. When you speak of creationism, you're speaking intelligently.
Right.
When you believe in a 6-day creation, you are believing what has been said by the one that created it all, and it's intelligent to believe him.
Right. Right.
Those who speak of big bangs and string theory and evolution are speaking unfounded, unprovable, vain imaginations. Why would you want to believe what they're saying?
Right.
Everything that is because Yahweh created it. Now that's valuable, invaluable information. Let me illustrate it for you one more time. You can go to a university and professors will give you information for the purpose of instructing you. That's the reason they're called instructors.
Right.
So they will give you information for the purpose of instructing you on what they want you to believe.
Right.
Their information is based on their theories. If you learn their information, then you become instructed on how to think the way that they want you to think. And if you learn to think the way they want you to think, they will give you a grade and eventually give you a degree reflecting that you now think the way you're supposed to.
Yeah.
Or you could do that, or you can study the book of instruction that was written down by Moses, who had millions of witnesses that saw him ascend into the very presence of Yahweh,
Right.
who saw Yahweh descend upon a mountain in fire, whose presence was so great that it caused the mountain to tremble in fear that he was there.
Right.
The millions of witnesses saw smoke billowing up out of that mountain as if it was coming up out of a furnace. They heard a trumpet blow louder and louder and louder, and then a voice came out of it that said to Moses, "Come up here." And they saw Moses ascend up into the presence of Yahweh. And he comes down with information.
Right.
Now, whose information are you going to believe?
Right.
Right? Yahweh, through Moses, has given us information on how he created everything and how he expects that creation to operate. He gave us this information for the purpose of instructing us. That's the reason it's called a book of instruction. If we learn this information, then we become instructed on how to think the way he thinks.
Right.
And if we learn to think the way he thinks, then that is without a doubt the very epitome of intelligence.
Right. Right.
If you think like he thinks, meditate on what he says meditate on, let it come out of your mouth what he tells you to say, that's the very definition of intelligence. Right? Let's pick up in verse 20. Are you there? Genesis 1. And Elohim said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that has life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And Elohim created great whales and every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly, after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. And Elohim blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the 5th day. So on the 5th day, Yahweh created the fish and the creatures of the sea and the fowl of the air. And notice there concerning the fish, he said, let them fill the waters in the seas. He told them, fill the waters in the seas, and so they did. says they brought forth abundantly.
Right.
Stick a camera down under the surface of the sea anywhere you want to. You will see that it has been filled abundantly.
Yes, sir.
Still finding things we didn't know was even in there.
Right.
Right? You will find that the sea is bringing forth abundantly just as Yahweh commanded it was to do. That is on day 5. On day 6, he turned his attention again to the dry land. In verse 24, Elohim said, let the earth bring forth a living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. The word translated living there is kai. Kai means that which is alive. The word translated creature there is nephesh, and it means to have breath or to breathe. So the living creature is a living creature that's a breathing creature that's alive, or a living creature that breathes. That's all it means. But then notice there it says, let the earth bring forth creatures that are alive and have breath in them, cattle and creeping things, and then it uses the word beast. Look the word beast up. It is the Hebrew word kai. And kai, we all just saw, meant living. So it's not beast as you might think beast. It just means creatures that are alive, that have breath in them. Notice that they are, it says, of the earth, the living creatures of the earth, the beast of the earth. That's where they came from. They were created from the earth, just like you and I were. That is what they're made from. They're made from the earth. Verse 25, and Elohim made the kai, the living creatures, the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps upon the earth after his kind. And Elohim again saw that it was good. We've seen that many times. What does good mean in Hebrew?
The very best.
You can't get better than good in Hebrew.
Right.
In English, good is 2 stages below best.
Right.
You got good, you got better, you got best. But in Hebrew, that's not the way it is. When Hebrew says something is good, it means you can't get any better than that.
Right.
It is perfection.
Right.
Yahweh looked at it and said, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that looks good.
Yeah.
All right? Did you notice that these creations on day 6 are not given the same command as those in the sea were given? That is, the earth was not told to bring forth abundantly of these living, breathing creatures. And they're not told to fill the earth. Remember, those that he created in the waters, he said, fill the waters.
Right.
But notice he didn't say that to these cattle and beasts, these creeping things. He didn't tell them, fill the earth. Makes you think.
Yeah.
Their populations will be regulated in a different way. And how would that be? By an overseer that Yahweh will appoint over them. Somebody made in his own image. That is the one that will have say in that population.
Yeah.
You'll find out that when Yahweh gives you authority in a thing, he'll never usurp that authority. That's the reason that, and we'll see, it'll take us more than one session to see it, but we'll see that when Yahweh gives man dominion and tells him, you have dominion, subdue the earth, that's the reason that from that point on, anytime there's a need for Yahweh in the earth,
Yes.
there's need of a man. He will work through that man to accomplish his will in the area where he gave him dominion.
Amen.
Look in verse 26. And Elohim said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. And Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim created he him, male and female created he them. And Elohim blessed them. And Elohim said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. And have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. And Elohim said, behold, I've given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creeps upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat, and it was so. See, this reason it tells us to meditate on these things day and night. Man is given every herb bearing seed, but the animals are given every green herb. There's a difference between the two of what He's giving them to eat and what He's given us to eat. Verse 31, Elohim saw everything that He had made, and behold, it was, say it again?
Very good.
Took it up a notch.
Yeah.
Didn't we say good's as good as you can get?
Yeah.
And yet Yahweh said it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. This is a command, if you will. Behold means look.
Yeah.
Behold, it was very good.
Yeah.
When something is described as good, you're being told it can't be any better.
Right.
But here is the word very, and the Hebrew word there means vehemently. To be very good means to far surpass your greatest imagination of what it might mean to be the best. However you would imagine it being the best, it surpasses that in a great way.
Wow.
Now listen. When Yahweh got through with everything, as He was doing, He said, that's good. He saw that was good. But when He got through with everything, listen to me here now. He impressed Himself.
Yeah. Yep.
He said, wow,
Yep.
behold, whoo, this is very good.
Yeah.
That's what He got impressed with what He had done. Not surprised, but impressed.
Yeah.
He knows that everything He just did will forever testify of the greatness of His power, the greatness of His knowledge, and the greatness of His understanding. He knows that when anyone, anywhere ever looks at anything at all that He has created, whether, we've said it before, whether they're looking at it through a microscope, whether they're looking at it through their eyes, whether they're looking at it through a telescope, whenever they look at anything at all that He has created, they will have to be, or at least they should be, astounded by what they're looking at.
Right.
And they should know immediately that the one who created it must be something.
Yeah. Amen. Amen.
That's the reason when He looked at it, He said, man, this is very good.
Yeah.
It will testify of who I am. Go to Romans 1. Got a few new folks with us on Facebook. We welcome y'all to our study this morning. Thank y'all for joining us. Romans 1. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Look in verse 18. For the wrath of Elohim is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Notice they have truth. It's not that truth is hidden from them. They have it. It is ever before them, and we're going to see in a minute what he means by that. What he means by that is creation testifies of the truth of a creator. Creation lets you know there is a creator.
Right.
But what do these men do? It says they hold the truth. They seize it and hold it down. They're not holding it saying, oh boy, I'm glad we've got this truth. They hold it down is what that Greek word means. The idea by this word is that they take that truth that creation testifies of and they suppress it to try to keep it from being known.
Wow.
They don't want people to know the truth of what happens when you look through a microscope at cells.
Yeah.
They don't want people to know the truth of what happens when you look at the universe through a telescope. No matter where you look, you see intelligent design.
Right.
There had to be a creator. They don't want people to know the truth about DNA. That DNA is the very core of our makeup, are the cells that contain information. Information is language.
Right.
So there had to be one who created the language that put the information in the DNA that keeps reproducing us the way it does.
Yes, sir.
They don't want people to know that. That they cannot look at creation and not be confronted with the evidence of a creator, but rather than seek that creator, they suppress the truth that there is a creator. Look in verse 19. Because that which may be known of Elohim is manifested in them, for Elohim has showed it unto them. For the invisible things of Him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Here's what that means. Even if you've never read Torah, even if you never even heard there was a Torah, even if you've never owned a Bible or read a Bible, even if you've never heard a sermon or went to a religious meeting of any kind, Paul says in Romans, you are without excuse, because all of creation has made known there is a creator.
Right.
Yahweh has showed us who He is by the magnificence of creation. Read verse 20 carefully. For the invisible things of Him from. The word translated from is apo, A-P-O. It's also translated this way, because of. So listen to that. For the invisible things of Him, because of the creation of the world, are clearly seen. You can clearly see the invisible things of the Creator because of creation.
Amen.
And then it says the eternal power and Godhead. That's what we come to understand. The word eternal power means His ever-enduring, never-ending dunamis or miraculous power. It's saying that His power is beyond the natural. It's miraculous in nature. It never wanes. It never fades. It never lacks. It's eternal. Creation itself reveals to us that eternal nature of His power. And then it says Godhead. That word just simply means the God-likeness of it. When you look at creation, you know that a man didn't do it.
Right.
And you know that it didn't just evolve.
Right.
That all of creation reveals to us that there is one who is a deity who had to do it all. Anyone who looks at creation honestly is confronted with the intelligence of the design of all things, and if they're unrighteous, let me say it this way, if they're not unrighteous, they have to admit that it all has to come from a divine creator. If they are not unrighteous, they have to admit it comes from a divine creator. It took a divine being to do it all. It couldn't just happen. That's the reason in Genesis 1 Yahweh said, behold, this is very good. He knew that what He has created will forever represent His existence. Look in verse 21. Because that when they knew Elohim, they glorified Him not as Elohim, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was was darkened. Verse 25. Who changed the truth of Elohim into a lie, and worshiped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. We could stop here and talk about idols and images if that's where we were focused, but we're not. Instead, let's talk about that phrase, they served the creature more than the Creator. You know, you have people in our day and time who devote their entire lives to saving the planet. And there are people who devote their lives to saving the oceans or saving the whales. Some are devoted to saving the darting snail or the spotted owl. They see all of these things and other things they're trying to say, but they see all of these things as being so amazing that they have to be saved. And yet there's no place in their heart or in their thinking for the one who created all of these amazing things. The invisible things of Yahweh are made known to us because of creation. Yahweh said that it was very good, and men ought to be more amazed by the one who made it than by the creation itself. Let's close this morning by looking at how pleased He is with what He did.
Yeah.
And how aggravated He can become when men can't look at what He created and be in awe of Him. Did you hear me?
Yes, sir.
We're going to see that He's pleased with what He did. And He gets aggravated when we can't see the magnificence of what He's done. Let's go to Job 38. You knew that, didn't you, Bob? You opened there already, aren't you, bud? That's awesome. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to read. We're not just going to talk about the Scriptures. We're going to read the Scriptures. And what I want you to do, before we read it, think about it for a minute. Yahweh, do you agree Job was going through a rough spot?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
A little bit.
I mean, he suffered things that we can't really even imagine. And suffering those things, he also had to endure the condemning attitudes of his friends, the judgmental attitude of his wife. He had to endure physical, mental, emotional pain that we can't even imagine.
Right.
And all of that drove him to open his mouth and say some things that there's not a one of us would blame him for saying it.
Right.
I mean, we all got a right to vent, right? That's what we think.
Yeah.
I'm just venting. And yet, when we see Yahweh show up to have a conversation with Job, He doesn't put His arm around him and say, yeah, son, I know you're going through a hard time. He called him on the carpet for running his mouth the way he'd been running it and for thinking the things he'd been thinking.
Right.
And do you know what Yahweh's number one point to Job was?
Creation.
You should have been able to look at creation and know better than to act the way you're acting.
Yeah.
We saw that in Isaiah last week too, didn't we? That Yahweh always brings us back to creation. No wonder the book of instruction starts off this way. First, the Elohim you served created the heavens and the earth. That should tell us everything we need to know.
Right.
He is mighty.
Yes, sir.
Job 38. Then Yahweh answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? In other words, the more you talk, the more evident it becomes that you don't know what you are talking about. Or, Job, I hear you talking, but I haven't heard you say anything yet that indicates that you know what you're talking about. Now that's blunt. Gird up now your loins like a man, for I will demand of you, and answer thou me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if you have understanding. So where did Yahweh immediately carry Job? Creation. Yahweh is pleased with what He's created, and He is adamant that we should know who He is and what He can do just by looking at the things that He has made. Verse 5. Who has laid the measures thereof, if you know? Or who has stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? Or who laid the cornerstone thereof? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of Elohim shouted for joy, shouted there is ruah. They let out ear-splitting shouts of joy when they saw what I did. I remember hearing the stars sing and the angelic host. I remember hearing them shouting, but I don't remember seeing you.
Yeah.
Verse 8. Who shut up the sea with doors when it brake forth, as it had issued out of the womb? He likens the birth of a child to the birth of creation. When the water broke forth, he was there to contain the water and to bring forth every living thing. Verse 9. When I made the cloud the garment thereof, and thick darkness a swaddling for it, and break up for it my decreed place, and set bars and doors. Sounds to me, right here, it sounds to me like he is making a reference to tides. He says, I divided up. Break up means to divide up. I break up for it my decreed place. The word translated decreed, there's not moed. I can see the word, but anyway, that Hebrew word there means an appointed time. So he says, I have divided up appointed times and set bars and doors. It sounds to me, especially when we read the next verse, like he said that when he set the seas and the oceans in place, he set the tides in place. You can come this far and no further. Listen to verse 11. And he said, hitherto shall you come, but no further. And here shall your proud waves be stayed. They can come here, but then they got to go back. And then they can come here, and they got to go back. They've got appointed times and how far they can go at each appointed time. Sounds like the setting of the tides to me. Verse 12. Have you commanded the morning since your days, and caused the day spring to know his place?
Wow.
In all of your days, have you ever been the one who was responsible for commanding the morning to come? Have you ever made sure that the dawn knew its place? Day spring, it's not talking about water or spring. It's talking about day springing forth. So he says, have you ever made sure that the dawn knew its place? Because you do understand that it doesn't show up at the same time every day. It constantly changes according to the equinox.
Right.
It can be getting days can be getting a little longer, or they can be getting a little shorter, according to what period of time you're in. So the sunrise comes at a different time every day. You always said, have you ever made sure it showed up on time? Verse 13, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth, that the wicked might be shaken out of it. The picture there is of the morning grabbing the earth like you would grab a sheet and shaking it. It says the dawn comes and shoots across the earth and shakes all of the wicked out of their dark places. Said, have you ever done that? Have you ever made sure it got taken care of? It is turned as clay to the seal, and they stand as a garment. And from the wicked their light is withholden, and the high arm shall be broken. Have you entered into the springs of the sea, or have you walked in the search of the depth? We're still searching in places, trying to figure out the depths of the seas in those places. With all the technology we have, there's still places we don't know exactly just how deep it really is. Verse 17, have the gates of death been opened unto you? Or have you seen the doors of the shadows of death? Have you perceived the breadth of the earth? Declare it if you know it all. Where is the way where light dwells? And as for darkness, where's the place thereof? That you should take it to the bound thereof, and that you should know the path to the house thereof. You know, we study light. We like to try to even time it and see how fast it is. We speak of its speed. But here's what Yahweh is saying. Well, where'd it come from?
Yeah.
You're proud that you think that you know it travels roughly 186,000 miles per second. Good for you. He said, where'd it come from?
Yeah.
He said, do you realize there was a time that it was not? Until I said, light be. Light became.
Yeah.
Now you have fun studying it. but it originated with me.
Yeah.
He's saying to Job, well, look in verse 21. Knowest thou yet because you were then born, or because the number of your days is great? In other words, I don't remember looking over my shoulder and seeing you when I said light be. I created it, you enjoy it, and never even stop to think of how majestic the one who created it must be, Mr. Job. You just take it for granted. Verse 22. Have you entered into the treasures of the snow? Have you seen the treasures of the hail, which I have reserved against the time of trouble, against the day of battle and war? By what way is the light parted, which scatters the east wind upon the earth? Who has divided a watercourse for the overflowing of waters, or a way for the lightning of thunder? Was it you, Yahweh, saying, that designed the earth so that the pouring rain would have a place to go and know where to go when it comes? Was it you that set the ways for the thunder and the lightning, verse 26, to cause it to rain on the earth where no man is, on the wilderness where there is no man, to satisfy the desolate and waste ground, and to cause the bud of the tender herb to spring forth? Men sometimes think it's because of them that these things come. Yahweh says, no, I make it rain in places where you're not even there. It's because of my divine design that all of these things take place. Verse 28, has the rain a father? Or who has begotten the drops of dew? Out of whose womb came the ice and the hoary frost of the heaven? Who hath gendered it? Who gave birth to all these things, Job? The waters are hid as with a stone, and the face of the deep is frozen. I think verse 30 is referring to hail. Sounds like it to me. That you got this water, 70 degrees outside, and all of a sudden it turns into a stone falling out of the sky.
Yep.
Piece of ice. Verse 31. Can you bind the sweet influence of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Can you bring forth Mazzaroth in his season? Or can you guide Arcturus with his sons? Good News Bible translates verse 32 this way. Can you guide the stars season by season and direct the big and little dipper? Can you do that? Can you control how the stars move through the sky? The answer, of course, is what? No. Verse 33. Do you know the ordinances of heaven? Can you set the dominion thereof in the earth? That is, do you know the laws that govern the heavens? Could you make them govern the earth? The answer, of course, is no. Verse 34. Can you lift up your voice to the clouds, that abundance of waters may cover you? That's a very good passage for men to know. Yahweh said to Job, can you make the clouds obey you? Can you demand that they give you rain? And they do. And the answer is no. I think sometimes men are taught that they can decree more than they actually can decree. And Yahweh said, no, you do not have the power to do that. Verse 35. Can you send lightnings that they may go and say unto you, here we are? You remember we talked about that Yahweh said to us in Job 1:8, this book of Torah, this book of instruction shall not depart out of your mouth, but you shall meditate therein day and night. And that word meditate means to imagine. Well, I love imagining this verse. I love imagining Yahweh saying to Job, can you command lightning and say, come here now? And the lightning come running at your side and said, here I am, sir. What can I do for you?
Amen.
And Yahweh said, no, you can't do that. Verse 36, who's put wisdom in the inward parts, or who has given understanding to the heart? Who can number the clouds in wisdom, or who can stay the bottles of heaven? I think what verse 37 is saying, again, just imagining it, that Yahweh is saying, you can't number the clouds, and when the earth needs rain, you don't have the power to take the bottles of rain in heaven and tip them over and pour rain out upon the earth. You can't do it. Verse 38. When the dust grows into hardness and the clods cleave fast together. Verse 39. Will you hunt the prey for the lion or fill the appetite of the young lions? When they couch in their dens and abide in the covert to lie in wait? Who provides for the raven his food when his young ones cry unto Elohim? They wander for lack of meat. Do you know the time when the wild goats of the rock bear? Do you observe the calving of deer? Can you tell the mouse they fulfill? Or do you know the time for their bearing? When they crouch and bring forth, they send out their pangs. In other words, there's all kind of births taking place out in the earth you know nothing about. Their sons are strong, they multiply with grain, they go forth and do not return to them. Who has sent out the wild ass free, or who has loosened the bands of the wild ass? To whom I have assigned the desert for his home and the salt land for his dwellings. He laughs at the roar of the city. He does not hear the driver's shouts. He seeks out mountains for his pasture, and he searches after every green thing. Well, the wild ox, and this word translated wild ox, if you look it up in Strong says it refers to the unicorn. Is it referring to a rhino? I don't know. Or some other beast? I don't know. But Yahweh says, let's just imagine it's a rhino. Will the rhino consent to be your servant? Will he spend the night by your feed trough? Can you tie him up in the furrow with a rope, or will he harrow the valleys for you? Can you hook a plow to him? Hook a plow to the rhino, Job. Work your beans with him, bud. Will you trust him because his strength is great, or will you leave your labor to him? Or will you have faith in him that he will return your seed and gather it to your grain floor? The answer to all that is no. So how can you see something that majestic and be impressed with his strength and his power and not be impressed with my strength and my power? The wing of the ostriches flap joyously, though not like the stork's pinions for flight. For she leaves her eggs to the earth and lets them warm on the dust, and forgets that a foot may crush it, or the beast of the field may trample it. She treats her young roughly as if they're not hers, for her labor is vanity without fear. Because Elohim has made her forget wisdom, and has not given to her a share in understanding. May not be the smartest bird on the planet, but there's one thing she can do. Verse 18. At the time she lifts up on high, she laughs at the horse and his rider. Yeah, you may think she's dumb, but try to outrun her.
Yeah.
You can't do it. Have you given the horse its strength? Have you clothed its neck with a mane? Can you make him leap like a locust? The majesty of his snorting is terrifying. He paws in the valley and he rejoices in his strength. He goes out to meet the weapons. He mocks at fear and he's not terrified. He does not turn back from the sword. The quiver rattles against him, the flashing spear and the javelin. He swallows the ground with quivering and trembling. He does not stand still for the sound of the ram's horn. When the ram's horn sounds, he says, "Aha!" And he smells the battle from a distance, the thunder of the captains and the shouting. It is hard not to look at a stallion and not be impressed.
Yeah.
Muscles rippling from one end of them to the other. As he just said, they know no fear. I learned as a young boy that when we had cows and we had horses. And when we were trying to herd cows, you could herd cows pretty easy. Cows come running at you, you stand there and do this, cows will turn. Horses come running at you, you're standing between them and the gate, you do this, you better get out of the way. They will run over you. That's why they know no fear. They will come. And Yahweh says, how can you look at this and be impressed with their power, their strength, their speed, their character, their makeup, and not be impressed with the one that made them.
Yeah. Amen.
Does the hawk soar from your understanding? Will he spread his wings toward the south? Or does the eagle mount up at your mouth and make his nest on high? He lives and stays on the rock, on the crag of the rock in the stronghold. From there he seeks food. His eyes see afar off. Everybody's impressed with the eagle's eyes. Well, who made them? And his young brood also sucks up blood, and where the pierced ones are, there he is. Behold, Yahweh said, it's very good.
Yeah.
Moreover, Yahweh answered Job and said, shall he that contends with the Almighty instruct him? He that reproves Elohim, let him answer it. Job answered Yahweh and said, behold, I'm vile. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand on my mouth. Once I've spoken, but I will not answer. Yea, twice, but I will proceed no further. Then answered Yahweh unto Job by the whirlwind and said, gird up your loins now like a man. I demand of you, and declare thou unto me. Will you also disannul my judgment? Will you condemn me that you may be righteous? Have you an arm like Elohim? Can you thunder with a voice like him? Deck yourself now with majesty and excellency, and array yourself with glory and beauty. Cast abroad the rage of your wrath, and behold every one that is proud, and abase him. Look on every one that is proud, and bring him low, and tread down the wicked in their place. Hide them in the dust together, and bind their faces in secret. Then will I also confess unto you that your own right hand can save you. Behold now Behemoth, which I made with you. He eats grass as an ox. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinew of his stones are wrapped together. His bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of Elohim. He that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. There is absolutely no doubt he is describing some kind of dinosaur-sized creature. Verse 20, surely the mountains bring him forth food where all the beasts of the field play. He lies under the shady trees in the covert of the reed and fens. The shady trees cover him with their shadow. The willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinks up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He can stand in a mighty flowing river, have no fear. He doesn't get a drink and hurry out. It doesn't concern him. He thinks to himself, if I had to suck up the whole river, I can.
Yeah.
He takes it with his eyes. His nose pierces through snares. You tell me what he's describing in these next verses. Can you draw out Leviathan with a hook? Or his tongue with a cord which you let down? Can you put a hook into his nose, or bore his jaw through with a thorn? Will he make any supplication unto you? Will he speak soft words unto you? Will he make a covenant with you? Will you take him for a servant forever? Will you play with him as with a bird? Will you bind him for your maidens? Shall the companions make a banquet of him? Shall they part him among the merchants? Can you fill his skin with barbed irons, or his head with fish spears? Yeah, lay your hand on him. Remember the battle. Do no more. Yahweh said, yeah, I dare you to touch him. Behold, the hope of him is in vain. Shall not one be cast down even at the sight of him? None is so fierce that dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand before me? Who has prevented me that I should repay him? Whatsoever is under the whole heaven is mine. Come on, folks, there's the point. Yahweh said, you look at this creature and it terrifies you. You look at this creature and you say, I'm not touching it. Yahweh said, how can you look at him and him terrify you, and you not be terrified by the one that made him?
Right.
I will not conceal his part, nor his power, nor his comely proportion. Who can discover the face of his garment, or who can come to him with his double bridle? Who can open the doors of his face? His teeth are terrible round about. His scales are his pride, shut up together as with a close seal. One is so near to the other that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another. They stick together that they cannot be sundered. They can't be torn apart. By his neesings a light does shine, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. What's verse 18 saying? Come on now, what is he saying? By his neesings? Have you ever nieced? Any of you? Do you know what it means to niece? It means to sneeze. Yahweh says when he sneezes, light comes forth. And his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Listen to this creature. Out of his mouth go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out. Out of his nostril goes smoke, as out of a seething pot or cauldron. His breath kindles coals, and a flame goes out of his mouth. What is Yahweh describing? A mythical creature? Or something he created? A fire-breathing dragon. The reason so many cultures have their stories of these things is because they exist and or existed. Fire-breathing dragons. In his neck remains strength, and sorrow is turned into joy before him. You can be having the best day of your life, and one of them things show up, and it'll ruin your whole day. That's what he said. The flakes of his flesh are joined together. They are firm in themselves. They cannot be moved. His heart is as firm as a stone, yea, as hard as a piece of the nether millstone. When you hunt, you're taught to aim for the heart. You always said it won't do you any good to aim for his. Be just like hitting a rock. When he raises up himself, the mighty are afraid. By reason of breakings, they purify themselves. The sword of him that lays at him cannot hold. The spear, the dart, nor the habergeon. Somebody help me with that word. Verse 27. He esteems iron as straw and brass as rotten wood. He'll break through iron just like he's breaking a piece of straw. You put him in a brass cage, he'd tear it apart like it was rotten wood. And folks, that's a fierce being. The arrow cannot make him flee. Sling stones are turned with him into stubble. Darts are counted as stubble. You shake your spear at him, he'll laugh at you. He'll chuckle. Sharp stones are under him. He spreadeth sharp pointed things upon the mire. He makes the deep to boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. He makes a path to shine after him. One would think the deep to be hoary. That tells me that he can move through the water at a rapid speed. Verse 33. Upon earth there is not his like who is made without fear. He beholds all high things. He is a king over all the children of pride. Here's the point. I know we took a while to read it, but if Job needed that lesson, so do we.
Yes, sir.
Creation testifies, all of it testifies there is an awesome creator.
Yes, sir.
Every part of it. And Yahweh says, if you are disrespecting me, if you're disheartened, if you're walking in doubt and unbelief, if you're having issues with something, the problem is that you haven't considered what I made for you, what I put all around you. If you would just look at any part of it, it would tell you how amazing I am. I'm even impressed with what I made. How can you not be impressed by it? It's hard to impress me, but I impressed myself. I looked at it and said, behold, this is very good. How can you look at it and not be impressed at all?
Wow.
He says, This book of instruction shall not depart out of your mouth. So the issue is, and there is an issue. The issue is either we haven't read Genesis 1 enough, or we haven't imagined it in the right way. Because all through Tanakh, Yahweh keeps bringing people, and even into the New Testament, Yahweh keeps bringing people back to Genesis 1 and say, you want to know who I am? Look at what I created.
Right.
We need to pay more attention to it.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
This book of instruction shall not depart out of your mouth. The reason that they can teach Big Bang and evolution is because we quit talking about the awesome Elohim we serve who created it all.
Right.
We need to start talking about it again. Well, of course I believe it was created in 6 days, and the one that created it, oh, he's my Elohim. I have a covenant with him.
Yes, sir.
He's amazing and strong and powerful. He takes care of me. That's we got to get it in our mouth. Isn't that what he said?
Yeah.
He didn't just say meditate on it day and night. He said don't let it depart out of your mouth. Make sure it gets down on the inside of you and flows out of everything you say.
Yes, sir.
Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. As his name is put upon you, so shall he himself bless you.